Well, hello everyone, this is Jeff Clark with another unboxing video. Recently I had the fortune to travel to South Korea, and on my return journey I particularly selected this flight so I could ride on this aircraft, or at least close to it. And there we have it. This is a Gemini Jets 200 scale, 1/200 scale A350-900. This is item number G2DAL753. It's an Airbus A350-900 in the Delta livery. There is another, Gemini Jets has another 1/200 scale A350, but it's sold out. And it's the previous release from 2017, so that's been reviewed by a few people out there already. So, but this is a newer release, so it's going to have the newer stand, and we'll see what else. I've watched that video recently, so I'll be able to kind of get a sense of what changes they have made between this one and the other. And we here have our metal stand. The previous release has a wooden stand, although the metal stand is pretty nice. And we have our removable gear. The previous release does also have the removable gear as well. Snug fit. And then there's also the covers if we want to use the in-flight configuration. Piece of protective plastic here. All right, let's have a look. The A350 is such a cool aircraft. It was the first time I've flown on it. I was going to try to fly Delta's A350 from Amsterdam back to or Detroit, but they changed the type on me to the 200 LR. But I also was able to get a model of that as well, so that worked out really good. And the A350 has all kinds of gear on the front here in terms of different probes and static ports. Some of these are the ice probe, angle of attack sensor, temperature sensors, pitot tubes and such. So most of these are located right on the nose. And you can see there's also the radome cover underneath, which has the glide slope antenna, and then also the weather radar so that the pilots can see that. I also had the good fortune of sitting in the cockpit of in the first officer seat on this aircraft, or the aircraft I flew on. This is N502DN, and I flew on N505DN. Although when I arrived in Seoul, at the gate next to the one I arrived at, which I flew on a 777-200ER, this exact aircraft was sitting there. So I took a couple pictures of it and was able to get a nice good close-up view, which was pretty cool. Now, Delta began as Huff to Land Dusters in 1925 in Macon, Georgia, later moving to Monroe, Louisiana, and later in the year 1925. Eventually purchased by Colette Woolman and on the September 13th, 1928, and he changed the name to Delta Air Service. Their first flight was from Dallas to Jackson, Mississippi, and that was on June 17th, 1929. They moved to Atlanta in 1941, just prior to the war, and that's now their current headquarters. So they also have the largest repair, overhaul, and maintenance operation there. That's the largest one in the United States, located right there on the field of Hartsfield-Jackson. Also the busiest airport in the world. And that's where I flew on the A350 from Seoul back to Atlanta. They started their international service in the 70s and 80s and eventually merged with Northwest Airlines on April 14th. And eventually that was in 2008, and then January 31st, 2010 is when Northwest Airlines ceased operations. Now, Delta was an all Boeing and McDonnell Douglas carrier. That's all they flew until they joined forces with Northwest Airlines, and that's when they picked up a lot of their Airbus A330s. They're the only operator, U.S. operator of the A350, and they have a total of 25 of them on order. I don't know how many they've taken delivery of at this point. They're using the Upward and Onward livery, where Delta refers to the merger with Northwest Airlines. You can see that in the tail here because it's pointing towards the northwest depending on the orientation of the aircraft. Same thing with these winglet devices here. These are actually 14 feet long, the blended winglet. It's hard to imagine that they're really that tall when you're looking out the window of the aircraft. I was in 54A, which is this last seat. I was actually in 47A, which is a little bit closer to the front here, but there was two people sitting next to me, and I didn't have a lot of room, and there was empty rows in the back, so I was able to score one of those. I was in my seat here when the first officer came back and asked me if I would like to come up and sit in the cockpit, because I put a little note in my logbook when I asked to have it signed, and said that I would love to come up and get a cockpit photo if I possibly could. And I also passed the 600,000 mile mark when I took this flight from Seoul back to Atlanta, so it's a lot of cool things about that particular flight, and it was nice to be able to really get a good look inside and meet all of the pilots and shake their hands and get a good look at the A350 cockpit. It's very impressive. So here we see the SkyTeam logo on the L1 door, and that beautiful mask that's on the cockpit windows of the A350. You can see the static port nice and clearly there. Emergency access point. More static ports as well. The L2 door. Now this forward section is 32 of the business class seats, and then they have 48 of the premium economy seats, 226 standard economy seats, and this is in a 333 configuration, which is the same as they run with their 777. They're one of the few carriers that still has a 333 configuration. So 9 across. A lot of the other carriers actually have 10 across on their 777s. Now we don't have the dual lights here, which I thought that would probably be a nice addition to this particular model, and I was expecting to see that in the update. And then here's our L3 door and the entrance points at each place. And then here's our registration, N502DN. Delta is a flag carrier of the United States, so they have their US flag there. And then we have the L4 door here as well. And we have that nice tail there. 3502 is the Delta fleet number. We see that on the tip of the tail there. Vertical stabilizer. Horizontal stabilizers look nice. Got a nice little bit of aluminum trim there, shown in the paintwork. And a nice groove for the horizontal stabilizer trim, elevator, and such. There's an illumination light on each side of the vertical stabilizer to illuminate that. Here we have the exhaust hole for the APU, and then there's also a strobe light there as well. Here's the doors for the APU. This uses a 1700 horsepower Honeywell APU located here, and that runs all of the fixtures of the aircraft when the main engines aren't running, things like your air conditioning and communication and lighting and such. There should be an intake hole for that too. This little square here, this little door will flap open when the APU is running, and that brings in the air that the APU needs to burn to operate. And the serial number on this aircraft is 135. It's a 350-900. Its first flight was on the 20th of July 2017 and delivered on August 8th, 2017. It uses two Rolls-Royce Trent XWB-84 engines, and those have 84,000 pounds of thrust. Total of 306 passengers in the configuration I described to you earlier. And then the length is 219 feet 3 inches, which is about the length of a 777-200. And then the wingspan 212 feet 5 inches, 31.9 degree sweep on the wings, 55 feet 11 inches is the height at the tail. And this aircraft uses mostly carbon fiber for the fuselage and the wings. And these wings are made in Broughton in Wales. Beautiful part of the world. We see how the Delta logo is shown on the inside of the winglets as well. Do not walk outside of this area markings are nicely visible. We have our spoilers, our flaps, and our ailerons. Also see nice detail to the slats on the front edge there. We have our red navigation light here. There's also a strobe light there. Take a look at the other side here. Again, we see our probes, static port. There's a escape hatch for the pilots here. SkyTeam logo. Nicely done execution on the LD3 loading unit door here. This is where your bags and such go into those cubes, and also cargo is loaded through this door as well. These aircraft can carry up to 20-30 tons of cargo. Here's our static ports again. The L2 door, L3 door, L4 door, and then again we have our loading unit door here. Nice work on the mechanism there. The Airbus doesn't have a bulk bin door on this side. That's where they can put your push chairs, and last minute bags can go into that other hold, but it's not on this aircraft. Here's our registration again, and our R4 door. I might have called these the left, but they're the R3, R2, and R1 door. Nice detail on the mechanism there. And the Delta logo. And the Delta 3D widget. They've been using this livery since 2007. And likewise on the wing over here. These are lashing point markings. The little orange squares there. Flaps, slats, and flaps and slats. Ailerons, spoilers. We have our fuel dump valve here. On the top we have numerous antennas. So this one is the emergency locator antenna. This is a VHF 3 antenna, or number 3. This is the GoGo in-flight Wi-Fi box. Then we have Auto Direction Finder 1, Auto Direction Finder 2. This is VHF1 antenna. This is the SATCOM antenna. So this and the Wi-Fi antenna are both SATCOM antennas, but this one here is the one that communicates with the aircraft to the ground. This is an anti-collision beacon. Airbus always has their SATCOM antennas forward, whereas Boeing has theirs aft. And on their Boeing smaller aircraft, the SATCOM antenna is actually inside. So on the 737, the only antenna you see is this one right here on the tail, towards the tail end. And then these other antennas, these little circles and such, the traffic collision avoidance system antennas. A nice bright blue. This is a Dme antenna, distance measuring equipment. Pressure release valves here. Here's the hole for the stand. Anti-collision beacon. You see the paint work on the doors for the gear. However, they're not grooved, so they don't really have a real good 3D look to them. This is another VHF antenna. And I'm guessing this is probably pressure release valve. And then here's the bulk bin door that we were talking about, where your push chairs and such go. Really nice model. I do like the contrast of the blue and the red. The engines here, the Rolls-Royce XWB 84s. Seeing some little paint here that looks like it's not quite the best, but the exhaust cone looks good. Nice markings on the engine itself. And we'll see if we can get these to spin. The nacelle looks really good. Good detail here where the nacelle attaches to the engine. Really cool. Shame we don't have the landing light there, but I'm sure on the next rendition it will be there. Really love that A350. It just got such a great look to it. The mask of the cockpit windows looks really, really neat, and it's just a really cool looking aircraft. Really glad I've got to fly on it. So now I've been able to fly on pretty much all the Airbuses since the A300. Not the A200 yet, but that's a new addition. But I've got the A380, A340, A330, A350 now. A320, A319, A321, A310. So nice to kind of round that out. Well, let's get this gear on here, and we'll see how it looks, and we'll see how it looks on the stand as well. So the launch customer of the A350 was Qatar Airways, and there are currently 30 carriers operating the A350. Here's our nose gear with our ETOPS. This aircraft is rated for 370 minutes ETOPS operation, so I'm running on one engine. Here's our fleet number as well, 3502. No jewel lights in this aircraft model. I also expected that the new version would have that, but I think we're using probably the same mold as for the other model. That was G2DAL753, and the registration on that was N501DN. Let's put these on here. And these gears do tilt, and they're metal. The 900 version has the double four-wheel bogie, and the 1000 model version 1000 has the six-wheel bogie. So that's how you can tell the difference between the two. There's more of the A350-900s than a lot more than there are the 800s. So the 800s was kind of an idea, but then really they'd already transitioned into the 800 or the 900 by then. Doesn't roll very good. I think that's also been reported by some of the other reviewers that the wheels didn't roll very well. See if we can get these engines to spin here. They look really nice in there. As you can see, that one spins really good. And number one engine spins really good as well, so that's good to see. Let's put the stand on here. Oh, nice snug tight fit. I really like that. Doesn't have a lot of play to it. Nice solid feel to it. Sits nice and straight on the stand. Has a good pose to it. Very nice. This is going to be a really nice addition to the collection. And as I said, my first A350 is my third Delta model. I've got the 200 LR777, and I've got the 757, the same one that I flew to back from Puerto Rico. The contrast of the engines and the dark blue with the white and the red of the Delta livery looks really nice. Truly impressive model. So the maximum takeoff weight of an A350, 280 tons, 617,000 pounds. That is, it's a lot. 243,000 pounds of fuel this thing can carry. That's 100,000 kilos. That's 50 tons. That's or 100 tons. That's just unbelievable how much fuel these things can carry. 8,100 nautical miles is the range, so that's one of the longest ranges of any aircraft. It's kind of like similar to the Dreamliner. They're both built with a lot of carbon fiber. They're both of newer design. They're both running high efficiency engines. They are both running a higher cabin pressure and humidity, which allows for the more passenger comfort because it makes you feel like you're not at altitude and you're also not as dehydrated from the air conditioning system. It's a full bleed system that they're operating, and they also it's a draftless system so that you don't feel like you have air blowing on you constantly, which is a really nice thing for long flights. This is a 13-hour trip from Seoul back to Atlanta, so comfort is definitely appreciated. So if you want to get this model, they are still available. The previous version is not. This is the new version with the metal stand, so this is a nice addition if anybody's collection, especially mine. I'm glad to have this one to put on the shelf now. I just got this maybe a few days ago, and I'm glad to get it out of the box and be able to display it. So if you like this video, go ahead and give me a like or subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel already. I'm getting close to 1,000 subscribers now, which is great. I appreciate everybody's support and comments and reaching out to me. It's fun to be kind of part of that community, and I've really enjoyed exploring and collecting these models. So thanks again for watching.